Good to see everybody. Here we are for a quick lesson with Chiptone and Construct 3 to make some basic game audio for the Endless Runner template. So you start here actually in Construct. Endless Runner is here in the template section. Just scroll down a bit, you find Endless Runner, click Open Project, the game loads right there, and it's pretty much so what you'd expect. Got a character running across a terrain, jumping over openings into the abyss, but it's completely silent. And in this lesson, we're going to add some sounds that give this game a little bit more life. Chiptone is the software that we're going to use to make those sounds, and because it's based in Adobe Flash, you get the security error that happens when you first load it. Don't worry if you see this. This is completely normal. You just need to click that button and then say that you want to allow the use of the Flash player. Mine reloaded on its own. Sometimes you have to go up to this area, choose allow there, and then it will give you an option to reload. Either way, just let the browser know that you're going to use Flash, and that's okay, and it will load this and everything will be as you'd expect it to. So in Chiptone, there's a ton that you can do. And one of the easiest ways to get started is with the sounds that are here in this generator section, because there's a lot of presets that really work well for games, and certainly no exception to this Endless Runner template that we're working with. Let's start with the basics, a start game and an end game sound. Start game sound, I am going to use this 1-up preset, and you can just continue to click this button until you hear something that you think would work well for the beginning of the game. And it's completely subjective. I mean, there's lots of things to choose from, of course, but I'm going to go ahead and go with this one. It seems to work well. I like the sound. I want to commit it to a final audio file, so I'll click Save Wave. I'm going to give it the name Start and just save it right here on my desktop. Make sure the format is waveform audio. .wav should be the extension. Click Save, and I've got a start game sound. I want an end game sound. I fall into the abyss. What do I hear? Let's try this lose preset from the generator. That's beautiful. Gonna take it no further. I like that a lot. You may need to do more tries depending on what happens with you. I like that. So I'm going to go with Save Wave. I'm going to call this one Game Over.wave and save that file. So now I've got two sounds that I can use and throw that into the game pretty quickly just to get things up and running. So I'll switch back to Construct, and one of the first things I have to do is import the sounds. You got the sounds folder right here. If you right click and choose import sounds, then click the import audio button, you can find the sounds that you want. Shift click or control click or command click, depending upon your operating system, to select multiple files. Click open. Oh, actually, before I do that, I want to check the bit rate. You want to make sure your bit rate is at least 128 kilobits per second. It could be lower if you have a lot of audio, or if quality is if bandwidth is a big concern, but this is kind of a happy medium between good quality and reasonable download size for these compressed files. Construct compresses them as in the WebM format, and you can see the file size is pretty small, all things considered. We click on import, and then those two sounds show up here in the project tab within Construct 3. Now, we can't put those sounds into the game until we have an audio object, and right now there is no audio object here. We've got a couple other things for input, but nothing to speak of for sound. To add that, we need to right-click and choose Insert New Object. And you can scroll through, or what I often do is just type audio, and then it just shows up automatically. Double-click to select that. Now we have an audio object in there, which means that we can start to actually do something with some sounds. We will put our sounds in to the game by going to the layout. Oh, I'm sorry, not to the layout, to the event sheet. And in here, we've got all of our events, and this is where we can say which event is going to chew which sound. Event number 1, right there, works out well for our start sound because this is when the game actually begins. So we'll click this button for Add Action, choose Audio, and click Next. We can choose the Play action and click Next. We get this great menu with all of our sounds when you use that action. This is our beginning of the game, so we'll choose the Start WAV file. There's some other things in here. We don't really need to worry about those right now. And I can click on Done, and now I've got my start sound in there. We can repeat that exact same process for the end game sound. That's down here a bit further in Event. There we go, event number 7. When the player falls below the layout height and we restart everything, that's where we actually want to play our endgame sound. So I will kind of repeat that same process. Click on Add Action, Audio, Next, Play Action again, Next. Game Over shows up by default. That's the one we want to play, so we can click Done. And our sound is in. It's not going to be great though, but I want you to hear it first before we talk about it. So I'll demo the game, click play, and you can hear that start sound right there. I jump, everything's good. I'm going to fall down this hole. And our end game, right now our end game sound is playing at the same time as the start game sound. So we're not getting that separation. This doesn't register as a separate event, and that's because it's here at the end. So it doesn't actually play that until it's reset the variables and restarted the layout. Well, we want that to happen first. So you can just grab this event and drag it up and put it right there. So that means that when the player falls below the height of the layout, we'll hear our game over sound, and then all the reset actions will take place. And I think that will make more sense for our players. So let's just fall into the abyss here. Yeah, we still get a bit of a delay, or sorry, not a delay, we still get a bit of an overlap, which isn't great. So, well, what can we do? Well, let's add a little delay in there. I'm going to add a system action that says to wait. And click Next, and we're just going to have it wait for 0.25 seconds. Oh, and it doesn't like that. It wants me to put a leading 0. 0.25 seconds, just a quarter of a second to pause. And we'll drag that one up here. So what that means is that that gives us just a little bit of time after that sound plays before it resets everything, and that should allow that event to have a little bit of time. Let's make sure that's right. Let this guy fall into the abyss. There we go. But you can hear there's this really crazy overlap that's also happening there. And that crazy overlap is because our player is beneath the layout height many thousands of times a second. And we really don't want this sound to be played many thousand times a second. That's why we get that really weird overlap effect. So we can add another condition to this. Add another condition right here. We're going to make that a system condition, and this is trigger once while true. This is a great condition in Construct because it makes sure that this event only fires once, and it will prevent those kind of repeats. So we just drop that in there to let the game know that when the player falls below the height of the layout, and when the system when the player goes below the layout, everything that's listed over here is only going to happen one time, and you'll hear the difference. Just let him fall off this abyss. I think in the end, something like this, maybe just giving it a full 1.5 seconds might be the right thing to do. Yeah, that works a whole lot better. And you can continue to tweak it from there as needed, depending upon the length of your sound, like I said. But this is great. Now we've got 2 sounds in the game. We're doing a little bit of management to make sure that the sounds don't overlap or do anything that sounds too weird. And we're ready to move on to our next event. Well, obviously, in an endless runner like this, we're going to do lots and lots of jumping, so we need to make a jump sound. So we can switch back here to Chiptone, choose jump, and you can click the preset in the generator. These all sound really great. It's really just a matter of personal preference. I like that longer one. It's kind of cartoonish. I think it's going to work really well. So I'm going to choose this one, click Save Wave, and I'm going to name this jump.wave. Save that on the desktop along with all of my other sounds. Now, this one we can import and attach to our game in exactly the same way. Just repeat that process. Right-click on the Sounds folder, choose Import Sounds, click Import Audio. Go to Jump, click on Open, Import, and we've got that sound in there. Now we need to find the event where jump happens, and that we're looking for some input. So we've got both touch and keyboard input here in event number 4, and that is going to give us what we need. We can choose Add Action, go to Audio, and choose Next. Go to Play again and choose Next. We'll choose Jump from the menu. Click on Done. And there, every time we have an event to jump, our player simulates the platform jumping, and it will play that jump sound. How does that work? There we go. My little runner can jump over all those big canyons. But one thing that you'll notice that starts to get tedious after you've played for a while is the fact that it's the exact same jump every single time, and that can start to get a little exhausting. Well, one of the things that we can do is just simply make some more jump sounds and tell Construct that we want to play one of several jump sounds that we make available to it, and have Construct do some randomization that will allow those jump sounds to mix and match and not be the same and not be static every single time. Oh, but there's one thing that I forgot before we go on and do that. I forgot. If we hit space a bunch, we can get way too many jump sounds at one time, and that's just a little obnoxious. So we can fix that, and basically just make sure that jump doesn't happen unless the player is actually in a position where the player can jump. So in order to do that, we are going to add a sub-event right here. Oops, and I need to click to get this to work. Actually, I need to click right here in this blank area in the bottom, and then I can add a sub-event. This is going to be attached to the player. And we're going to look at the platform options and basically see that when the player is on the floor, meaning that the player won't actually, we won't hear the jump sound unless the player is on the floor. Let's think about the way we jump in the real world. We can't jump in midair. But now, jump will happen whenever the keyboard, a key is pressed or a touch event happens, and if the player is on the floor, then we just simply drag that action down there and attach it, and that means that the sound will play when the player is on the floor and we say that we want to jump. And I can spam my space bar as much as I want, but I only jump when I'm on the floor. Maybe you can hear the spacebar clicks coming through. That just feels a whole lot more stable and a little less buggy from a user interface point of view, because we don't get sounds that are happening just because. We get sounds that are attached deliberately to the interactions that we make as a player. And that's much more consistent with what we'd expect when we're operating the controls of the game and trying to play through. So now that we've got that in place, we can go through and address the problem of too many of the same sounds. How do we randomize those? How do we make those so that they're less static overall? Well, chiptone is what we're going to do. And our first jump sound is actually loaded in here. There we go. And I can change the pitch here. And you can hear that that gives it some variation. But the other thing we can do is hit this mutate button. And mutate will make subtle changes to all the parameters that lead to this sound. So we get something that's almost the same, but not quite identical. And mutate is great for generating variations. So with this first mutation that I have, I'm going to go ahead and keep it and click Save Wave. I'm going to name this Jump 01. And the 01 is really an important part of this process. I'm going to impose a sequence on the naming structure so that I have something consistent that I can lock my naming to, and I'll know when I code this later in construct exactly what those names are. So there's Jump 01. I'm going to hit Mutate again, and I'm going to Save Wave, and I'm going to go, Jump 02. And you can hit mutate as many times as you want. I mean, really, the idea is to get sounds that you like. Sometimes it happens that the first one you click is good. Other times, you've got to go through a few times to get something that you think sounds right. That's a really long one. Well, that's even longer. Wow, this is crazy. Listen to those. Wow, and listen to how long that's going on. Well, one thing that's happening is I've got the length and release. It's stretching the sound out over a long period of time. So let's back that length down. Let's back that release down and go with a much shorter sound. Even add a little bit of time to the attack. So it takes a little longer to back up, maybe not quite so much. There we go. And we've got another jump sound. So I'm going to save that as a wave, and I'm going to call it Jump 03. And of course, you could continue to hit mutate, save wave, Jump 04, and on and on and on you go, depending on how many you think you need. But that's really all you need to do. Now that we've got those few variations, we can come back to construct and just make some modifications to the event that plays our jump sound. Now we know that that's here. We coded that already. But right now it's just playing a single sound. We need to edit this action in order to make it choose randomly from one of the variations that we made. So we can double click this, and right away this play action only allows us to pick something from the menu. Oh, and by doing that I can see I forgot an important step. I forgot to import my new jump sounds. So first things first, right click, import the sounds. Let's just go ahead and grab all 4 of those and bring those in. Construct is great. It maintains the bitrate parameters that we set earlier, compresses everything in the WebM format using those same settings, so everything's consistent for all of our imports. Click the import button, and now we've got our 4 jump sounds, which means they're available for the game. So I can come back to this action, double click, open it up. And here we have the option, all our sounds are there, but we can only choose one. That's one of the limitations of this play event, or play action, sorry. It just doesn't allow us to choose more than one. So we need to go with a different action. A great way to do that in Construct is to click the back button, and that allows you to go back into this menu where you have all of the available actions for, in this case, a sound object. I need to choose play by name in this case, and I will click next. And when I do that, it asks me to specify the audio file name. It also asks where that sound is going to be found. Is it in the sounds folder or the music folder? Well, we've imported everything into sounds, so we can accept that as a default. But here in the audio file name, I need to provide some information. And this is where in Construct we can do something that's more like the coding that you do in a game engine. We can use the choose function. Choose looks like that, just the word choose followed by an open and close set of parentheses. And then I know that I've got 4 different variations here. And to fit the syntax of this command, I have to put each of those names inside a pair of quotation marks, and I have to separate those with a comma. So I'm going to do a pair of quotation marks, comma, pair of quotation marks, comma, pair of quotation marks, comma, pair of quotation marks. So there's our 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of quotation marks. Then I can just simply type in the names. Jump 01, copy that, paste it in here to the second pair of quotation marks and change it to 02. Paste it again there, change it to jump 3. Paste it again there, change it to jump 4. So now, choose function will randomly select jump 1, 2, 3, or 4 every time this action is queued. We can click on the Done button. You can see what that looks like here in the event sheet. And then we can click the play button and audition it. And you can hear we get a different jump sound every time I hit a key on the keyboard. And those variations really give you something that just sounds more fresh. But the jump sounds, because of the mutate function in Chiptone, don't sound so disparate that every jump is just completely different, and the player would be led to think, whoa, what did I just do? That sound doesn't seem like the last one at all when I did the same action in the game. And that's something that's kind of important to keep in mind when you're making your variations. You need to kind of find a happy medium. You want enough variation that it sounds different from the others, but not so much that it sounds completely disconnected or like a completely different sound. But mutate inside of Chiptone, this function right here, is a really great way to do that. And if you find that those effects are too extreme, well, there's some other things that you can do, and we'll take a closer look at that in this next step. The next step is to address another continuous event that's in the game, something that, happens, but we just don't have a sound for it yet, and that's running. Now look at this little creature. It's running across those green blocks, and we don't have any sound for it whatsoever. Now we also don't have an animation, so we don't really know, what its footfalls would sound like, but at the same time, we kind of expect a running sound as it makes its way across this terrain. So let's start by creating some sounds for running. You can see there's nothing in the generator, but running is, a foot hitting a hard surface. Depending upon what that surface is, it could be gritty, it could be crunchy, it could be sploshy, lots of different things. Just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to use the boom generator. And that gives us something that's kind of like an explosion. But what it does is from the palette of waveforms up here, it picks one of the noisy waves, which gives us a sound that's not pitched and really works well for something that's kind of percussive. And so we get a sound that doesn't sound like it comes from an instrument, like a piano or a woodwind or a brass instrument. It sounds more like a percussion instrument. This sounds like some kind of cymbal. But it stretches on for a long time. It's far too long for a footfall. And that's where we can make some adjustments here in the amplitude envelope. We can change elements of the length and the release to make this a shorter sound. I'm going to start by just giving it a very, very, very short release. And maybe that's a little too short. But I also have this length parameter. So let's try giving it a little bit more length. And change the pitch. And not really crazy about this sound. So let's go with something different. That's kind of promising. It's a little bit more dull. Yeah, I think that's working well. So let's do the same thing. Let's drop the release. Yeah, and we get a really short sound. So I'm going to adjust the length until I get something that sounds, I'm kind of imagining, a foot landing in some dry leaves. And this is also where you can play with the pitch on the keyboard. Now, higher pitches make the footstep a little lighter. Lower pitches make the footstep seem a little heavier. And this is, again, where it comes down to just a subjective choice. What sound do you think is best for your game? I like something that's kind of in this lower middle range, so I'm going to go ahead and go with that. And we'll click Save Wave so that I've got... so I can make a wave file, and then I'm going to call this step 01. As you can see, I'm using that same sequential pattern as before for these footstep sounds. I'm going to save that. Now, there's a couple different things I could do. I could click the mutate button and get another sound. That one's that works well, so I'll call this step 02. The other thing you can do is just change the pitch and go up, just pick another key that's nearby. And you'll have the same parameters. It's just going to play at a slightly different frequency and give you a sound that's slightly, in this case, I went up by 3/2 steps, so it's slightly higher. I'll call this one step 03. And let's hit mutate again. I'm going to go down lower. This one's really short, which is kind of interesting. So I'll click Save Wave, and I'm going to call this step 04, as you probably guessed. So I click Save, and now I've got 4 different variations for the footfall sounds. The process at this point should be pretty familiar because we've done this already. We know that we need to import the sounds, so we can follow the same steps that we have before. I grab 4 step sounds that I just made, click Open. Construct takes care of compressing them. I click Import, and now my sounds are over here, which is really helpful. And now I need to find an action where this makes sense. And in this game, when the player is on the floor or on the surface of the blocks, Construct tells it to simulate running or pressing right. So it means it's going to move towards the right on our screen. So this is basically what keeps the running to the right action happening the entire time. This is also where we can add some additional events and actions to play our running sounds. So I'm going to do this in kind of a similar way. I'm going to add a sub event. I'm going to make this a system event, and I'm going to set it to happen every X seconds. X meaning how long do you want it to be? So I'm going to try 0.2 for now. And that just means that, every 0.2 seconds, it's going to do something. What will it do? Well, this is where we want it to play a sound. And we know that we have lots of different variations. So this is where we can use that same technique that we did with our jump sounds. We'll choose play by name. We can make sure that we're working within our sounds folder. We'll use the choose function. And we'll put in 4 placeholders for our 4 sounds. And then we just add the names. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3, and Step 4. Fantastic. So now we have all of our steps here inside the choose function. And when we test the game, we should hear everything that we have implemented in addition to the step sounds that you'll hear played at this fairly tight interval as our runner makes its way across the screen. There we go. And it's happening. So there's a couple things I think we need to tweak. I think this interval is a little too long, so I'm going to make it a little shorter. Shave off 5/100ths of a second. And the other thing I'm going to do is change the volume. Right now, when the volume is set to 0, it means it's playing at full volume. I'm going to go with -10, which is a setting that will cut the volume in half. It'll be half as loud as it was before, just as a place to start. Here, what does that sound like? I like the volume. I don't like the interval. The interval's just a little too fast. So let's go ahead and go back to where we were before, 0.2 seconds, but I'll keep the volume. And, you know, one of my jump sounds is really short. I think it's jump 3. Oh, wait, not jump sound. Sorry, one of my step sounds. Yeah, step 3 is really short. Oh, no, step 4 is really short. Yeah, I'm just double-clicking these to audition them. Yeah, step 4 is too short. When that plays, it really just doesn't match the others. So let's try... little shorter on all counts. And let's just highlight step 4 and replace that. I can go back to my template. I can import sounds again. We'll replace step 4. How does that sound? Still just doesn't sound great. So the other option, just simply cut it out, take it out of the mix. Let's get rid of that sound that just doesn't make sense. And now we have step sounds that are more consistent. And even though that mistake is maybe a little embarrassing on my part, it's good because it helps you hear how when you have a sound like that that just doesn't match with the others, it really stands out and really kind of detracts from the effect of having that randomization and having something that's supposed to be many instances of the same thing, but all slightly different than one another. Well, that is it. I hope that this has been helpful for you. I hope that you can take the code from this lesson and implement it into the games that you're designing on your own this week. There's a lot of useful things in here, and I'm sure that this is going to help improve the sound quality of your games and help you do some really innovative things with the designs that you dream up this week. Thanks again, everybody.